Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show for March 13th, 2019. The grind continues in the Division 2, which is out for early access purchasers. I don't know if you have the extra cash to buy those special editions. You're probably playing it right now, but it's coming out Friday for everyone else. And Steve and I, Steven Messner, our senior reporter, is here to talk with me about that. How you doing, Steve?
Hi. Hey, I'm doing good. How are you, James?
I'm superb. Superb.
Superb.
Superb. So many good games coming out, and Sekiro is right around the corner. So
2019's been crazy good so far. I keep saying it.
it's bonkers, bonkers. Also with us, Bo Moore, hardware lead. How you doing, Bo?
Hey, that's me. Hello. I'm good.
You are going to help us talk about, well, besides the total glut of news happening, you are going to have some professional opinions on the Halo series. Because guess what got announced this week, you guys?
Halo
Halo.
for PC.
Halo.
Gears of War. Oh, Halo.
We're finally going to find out what happened after Halo 2.
Yeah. Been waiting 10 years to figure out that cliffhanger, man. It was brutal.
I know. Finally, here we go. But yeah, it's bonkers. Halo Master Chief Collection is coming to the PC. We don't know when, sometime this year, and it's doing a staggered release. We'll go into depth about everything we hope to see and will get in that collection. But it's a damn good time to be playing games on the computer. If you
I'm so hyped.
So hyped. But we start off with our usual opening segment, and that's Highlight of the Week. It's where we talk about things that stood out to us in PC gaming over the last week, whether it's news, something we played, or something totally random that is tangentially related to our favorite hobby. So why don't we start with you, Steve? What's your highlight? What's going on?
Oh, man. Well, some of you guys might have already read this if you are patrons of PCGamer.com and you go there to read the words that we write. But last week I wrote a story because I started playing League of Legends.
Why, Steven? Why?
What are you doing?
The same reason. What are you doing? Yeah, I mean that was the crux of the article. Why the hell have I started playing? Of all the games that are coming out that I could be playing, why would you start playing League of Legends in 2019? I started doing it because my friends got into it. I had a group of friends, and we kind of migrate from game to game that we can play together. And one of them started playing League of Legends, and then one Saturday we were all just kind of like, "Fuck it, let's install it and learn." And guess what, guys? I really like League of Legends, and
Oh, no.
I will go with that for that game. It's fun. It's fun. So it's been really interesting getting into it. I feel a bit silly because in that article I was like, it's not as toxic as people make it out to be. And then almost like immediately afterwards, I've had like a long string of very toxic games where people have called me all sorts of awful racial slurs and just raged and all sorts of things. I've taken the adult route of it, which was reporting every single one of those people.
Good.
And telling them that they've been reported multiple times, because I think that's also funny to just respond to trolls by saying. I told one of them that my dad worked at Riot too. Anyway, but no, League of Legends in 2019. Who would have thought that it's actually a really fun game? But here's the thing: like 1 million people still play League of Legends.
Yes.
Millions of people still play League of Legends. It's massive. They actually just had like the LCS is like their championship series, their circuit that goes on. They're doing like the North American semifinals or something like that. They're doing something, and I was watching it trying to understand what was going on. But I'm still so new to that game. It's Heroes of the Storm, which I already loved and is now basically dead. But so much more complicated, and I think in that regard better because there's just more to it. So yeah, I mean, if you can put up with like the occasional bully or the occasional person who just rages, it's actually really fun to play. It's not so intimidating to start out because you're playing with other people who are also starting out. Like it doesn't throw you to the wolves. You know, I found actually like the first 30, 40 hours that I've put into it have been really enjoyable. I made some friends even that I have on my friends list that I queue with now. Yeah, like strangers who we just had like a good game with, and then they sent me a friend request. Like, so I've had some like really cordial exchanges with people, and then obviously like the sort of traditional like what League of Legends reputation. So it's not all bad. But
cool.
Yeah, League of Legends.
Happy to hear it.
I started playing it. Yeah, I don't know.
How's the lore?
It's the lore is real bad.
Yeah.
So the funny thing, and I don't want to like call this guy out, but like I knew that saying the lore was bad and that article was going to draw out the lore fanatics, because League of Legends has an enormous community that is just like invested in the lore, which is so weird to me. And so we ran a story actually a couple months ago about League of Legends role players who like role play on the forums, and like what that sort of lifestyle is like, or that experience. And I found that so bizarre. But now that I'm much more like invested in that game and I see the lore, it's so bad. The worst thing about it is like the way it exposes it to you. So instead of being like, here's a cool intro video in the game, or like, I don't know, like any kind of number of ways you could sort of expose people to sort of this greater story. And I understand, of course, there's going to be like a story to what's going on here. That just, it only makes sense. Instead of like the way they do it is like, or one of the ways they do it is like tool tips. So when you're like loading into a game, you know, like the typical loading screen tooltip will pop up, but instead of having like anything useful or like tips for new players who are jumping into this extremely difficult, intimidating game, and like, you know, telling you how to play it, instead the tooltips, like more often than not, are like, Caitlin's parents built her first Hextech rifle when she was 21 years old, or like at the crest of the city of Shurn sits a dial to the sun god Amathar, and you're just like, what the fuck? This means nothing to me. Like, it's just so bad. It's like a book of did you know League of Legends tips, or like lore bits, and it's so bad. So anyway, I called it out, and there was a man on Twitter who was very upset with me. But what I loved about it was his Twitter account was a character from League of Legends that he invented. And he was specifically upset because in the article I called it, so there's like a race of characters in League of Legends called Yordles, and they basically look like Bichon Shih Tzus.
Okay.
And so I called them that, like, derogatorily, to make fun of them. And it just turns out that his League of Legends character that he's like made in his own imagination is one of these Bichon Shih Tzus. And he like quoted me and was like very upset. He like tweeted this nasty tweet at me and then was like, signed a Bichon Shih Tzu. I was like, oh man. Like, I wanted to tweet back and be like, you know, you're not this person, right? Like, you are a human being and not an engineer. They're always like smart. I love when in fantasy when it's like, oh, this character is really tiny and dumb and ugly, but it's so smart, guys. It always feels like a cop-out. Anyway,
oh man,
the lore is bad. Don't get me started. I'm sorry, you opened up the faucet on
it's okay, man. It's okay. You gotta let it out. You gotta let it go.
My resentment for
hold
League
it
of
in.
Legends lore.
To be fair, Pseudonym in chat says there's some good writing in there, creative writing in there, and there's a wide range of characters. Yeah, there are a ton of characters, but there's just minimal continuity and coherence. And I think probably the way they surface it, like you were saying, it's just like out of context, especially like that.
Yeah,
it's
the context,
ridiculous.
right? Like, I would be totally down. And yeah, like some of the videos that they do on their YouTube channel are like really interesting. I mean, I've probably now watched that K-pop music video they made.
Oh, it's fantastic.
For their characters. I've watched it like several dozen times now. Like, it is such a good song. It looks incredible. Like, there's no denying that the League of Legends universe is like at least quite interesting. It's just, yeah, like find a better way to introduce players to that, and don't put it in front of actual game knowledge, because I think that should be sort of like the holy grail. Especially like it frustrated me a lot too, like when you're learning characters, there's sort of the character page where you see 110 champions, which is a lot to take in. Over 100 champions at least. It's a lot to take in. And so you click on one of them and there's a button that's like learn more, and you're like, oh gee, I'm interested in learning more about this champion. What it does is it takes you to the League of Legends lore page, where it's just like, here's a short story from this character. Here's their famous quote, and it's like, oh, I'll never rest until Balthazar is dead. And you're like, okay, I'm brand new to this game. Like, help me, throw me a bone, Riot. And then you're like, I want to actually just learn what this character fucking does. And there's like a tiny box in the bottom of that like lore web page that's like, it doesn't even say what the box does, but it just the League of Legends logo. And if you click on it, that's where it finally takes you to like a stats page where it breaks down your abilities. And it's like, God damn it, guys. Like, this needs to be reversed.
Priorities.
Yeah.
Well, Godspeed. Apparently, you're off to a great start and things are going well.
Yeah.
From the sound of it, you're staying hinged.
If you
somewhat.
have if you have a few friends, like I
Mm-hmm.
100% recommend League of Legends. It's like a game with infinite amounts of depth. It is a lot of fun to play with buds. It's a very casual game. It's not like Dota 2, which is actually quite intimidating. Like Dota's really tough. League of Legends is a bit more casual, which I'm sure people will get upset. I'm saying that. I think it's to its credit that it's more casual. Yeah.
It's for babies. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be an ongoing saga, so I'm looking forward to chapter 2.
Yeah, next week I'll be back on and like I'll have a beard and my hair will be down to here and I'll barely speak English.
You're like, actually, Lorthazar.
Actually, the lore is good. Actually,
I'll be wearing like blue cosplay as one of these Yordle characters.
Got a couple of Shih Tzus in the background.
Yeah,
man.
Now you have become the Shih Tzu.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much. You're a brave person.
Shih Tzu's art of war.
Bo, let's move on and see what Bo's been up to. What's your highlight of the week? Anything stand out?
Nothing really. I've been playing a lot of Apex. That's been my game lately. It's a lot of fun, as y'all saw me stream it a couple weeks ago and do quite poorly, but that's fine. It's fun though. I'm okay. Like wildly okay at that game.
Wildly okay.
Wildly okay. It's like I know what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can sort of aim. I can aim better than people who can't aim, but not as good as people who can aim. So I find myself in that middle ground where I'm like, I can get some kills, but I can't carry a team on my own. So
with you there, Bo. With you there. And
yeah.
How about that tease yesterday? Some on Origin, the Origin client. Some
it was
assets leaked.
It was a little teaser that was not meant to be. Apparently, we sort of got confirmation that Octane is definitely a real thing because like they didn't refute that, and there was like mentions to it. I think on the so for y'all who haven't read this, like the Origin briefly put up like a splash page saying like. I don't know if it said the battle pass is live, but it said like you can buy the battle pass or something like that for Apex Legends Season 1, and then it like went away quite quickly. But of course, you know, Reddit and the entirety of the Apex internet captured it for us to see.
Yes.
And yeah, the Respawn. I was like, who makes this game? Respawn. Had to put out a statement later in the day being like, we know you're hype. We know you thought this was coming. We know it like went up by accident, but it's not coming today. We'll have more to share soon. Sorry.
You know what blows my mind? It blows my mind that Respawn went, 3 years with this game under wraps that no one found out about. And now that it's out, they can't go like 3. I mean, I guess now that everyone is obsessed with it, of course, now they're looking for leaks, whereas before they had at least like the benefit of no one really knowing what to look for. But like now
well, that's like the map of it actually did leak like a year ago.
Yeah. Right. And no one cared.
No one cared.
Yeah, no one cared. But now it's like, God, like, and not just Octane, but like those leaks of all the other characters, which look pretty official too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is it's because it's being data mined from the client, and so they in their statement they were like, the stuff that you find that you find by data mining, like, may or may not be real. Like, yeah, there's a possibility it's stuff that we're working on, but it might be stuff that we like tried out and then eventually cut, or that we're working on but isn't done yet, or that like, you know, we were doing and then we're not doing that anymore at all. And so like just because you find some names and data files in the client like doesn't mean that it's the next thing coming. Having said that, Octane is like definitely the next thing coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
So expect that, man. I bet we find something out by the end of this week, or
I would think almost definitely. Like it has to be imminent. They know that their fan base is like rabid for this, and then like we saw that very much so in terms of the interest in the stories that we've written about Apex. Like have been massively popular. So it's a big game right now. I don't know if you know this, but like a lot of people are playing this Apex Legends thing.
I'm happy about it. It makes me happy. It's a great game, and I'm happy to see. I mean, I underline this every time we talk about it. Titanfall 2, unsung hero, the multiplayer of 2 to 3 years ago, and I'm happy. I'm so happy Respawn is getting their day in
It's
the
also
spotlight.
just like mind-boggling to think that like Fortnite sort of was like that meteoric rise, and we were like, oh, this is like, oh my gosh, like who could have ever seen this coming? And then for it to happen again, even more. I mean, we time will tell whether or not Apex ever eclipses Fortnite, but at least like it reached 10 million users vastly, like much quicker than Fortnite did.
Well,
so it's like, oh my god.
It's fascinating too, because like Fortnite and PUBG, and like there was sort of like a snowball effect of these big. Well, PUBG wasn't free, but these big free to play games, especially in the battle royale genre. I think we're going to start to see it move outside this kind of phenomenon, move outside of the battle royale genre. But you essentially have like Fortnite creating this massive, massive, massive audience, and Apex can just inherit that so easily now and sort of just pull from that. Like,
it's kind of interesting how that didn't really happen before with similar games. So like previously we've seen this cycle of games get really popular and get copied with, I mean, it was MMOs and then it was MOBAs, like even FPSs and like class-based FPSs, and now it's battle royale games. But I feel like this is the first time where it was like one game, it was like a paid game, it got really popular. In this case, it's PUBG. And then a free version comes along and gets crazy popular. And it like, it's like PUBG established the audience, and then Fortnite inherited it. And because it was free, it got like way, way, way more so fast. We didn't really see that with, say, like MMOs. Like you had WoW and you had the other paid MMOs, and then there were some free ones, but like they didn't take off and eclipse the paid one in the way that Fortnite did. Like
yeah,
same
like
thing with
MMOs are still kind of the dominant.
Yeah, and like I'm trying to think of MOBAs, like they were
always free.
Were they all? Yeah, they were all free. So it was just like,
honestly,
and again, them all being free, like a new one would come out, but it inherited some of the audience because like the audience was already there, and some people migrated over, but it wasn't this like absolute eating the other one's lunch like we're seeing now with Fortnite totally dominating. And like I'm not saying that Apex is dominating Fortnite right now. Like Fortnite definitely still has more players, but like they rose really, really quickly and have a huge audience. And yeah, I don't know if it would have been possible without Fortnite. If Apex just came out of like literally nowhere and PUBG and Fortnite didn't exist, like
who knows
what would happen?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
It probably would have gotten really popular because it is a really fun game and it's free and all of that, but like it probably wouldn't have risen quite as quickly because it would have taken longer for word to get out that like, hey, battle royale games are really fun.
Right. What's funny too is it's I think really easy to buy into the narrative that like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is just dead. Like who's playing that game anymore? Sort of the BR that started it all, and it's still the top third played game on Steam right now. And I mean, like, yeah, if you look at the overall, I'm looking at the Steam charts right now. Like its peak was 3.2 million concurrent players, and now it's down to 780,000. But I'm like, that's still 780,000 peak concurrent players daily. That's insane. So yeah,
developers dream of that number. They don't even dream of that. They dream of something far, far lower than that. And so it's like
they dream of that of like lifetime sales, let alone like concurrent players.
You kidding me?
It's hilarious how much like Fortnite has like warped expectations, I think. But then, I mean, has it really? Because then Apex is, skyrocketing up to, looking to be sort of on par or at least have an enormous audience, and PUBG, like, it's bizarre. It's almost, I don't know. It's hard to wrap your head around.
I know. It's going to be an interesting like the next decade will be fascinating for this kind of game, this kind of phenomenon. I'm just wondering what the next game will be, the next developer. You got to know that seeing Apex come out of nowhere like that, every other capable developer or publisher is going, what the fuck can we do? Like, what the fuck can we do to inherit this free-to-play audience, or at least like draw the same, get it on that PSN dashboard and the Xbox dashboard, and it's gonna be bonkers. I keep saying this is like totally unrelated, not totally unrelated, but Destiny 3 free to play. It's going to be, if that makes sense, free to play. You can see the dashboard. It's going to be big.
Yeah, I mean, I see that.
I want to see a lot more free to play games in general. But anyway, great discussion. Great talk, guys.
Pat ourselves on the back. We did it.
We did it.
Good
we had
content.
Ideas. I'll just run over my highlight real quick. Have you guys heard of this game, Hypnospace Outlaw?
I've heard of it. I've not played it.
Yeah.
Oh my
Seems
god.
real cool.
It's
Give
from
me the rundown.
Yeah, it's from the developer who made this Dropsy. Do you guys remember Dropsy, the sad, damp clown adventure game? Hypnospace Outlaw is our review posits it as one of the best detective games on PC. But what you're actually doing is it's like a simulated desktop that sort of mimics what at least the spirit of the desktop in like 1999, what that looked like. And you are an enforcer in this weird dystopian society who is basically trawling the internet for violations of whatever rule exists in this world. It's basically like a satirical take on government overhead, and the more modern ubiquitous fears about the NSA watching you and everyone digging through your data to criminalize you or use that against you, weaponize that. But anyway, it's a much more laid back, comical sort of representation of that style of internet, but it is also extremely faithful. I'll like lay over a trailer or something, some audio in the audio podcast and the video version of this, but if you can take yourself back to like the days of Kid Pix with those weird like FMVs that were super artifacty and pixelated and terrible like VO with the tiniest bit rate you could ever imagine. The AOL sort of like CDs and the weird tutorials that would walk you through with these expressive animations, and print shop, and the early days of the internet with X pages and everything was bright and terrible. GeoCities, maybe. Oh, yeah, Bo, yeah. you had a.
I had a.
Oh my god!
Site. It was amazing.
Can you please tell us about this website that you?
I will. Yes. One of my greatest points of pride/shame is the Pokemon fan site that I developed on the web domain of Max Pages, I believe it was, which was one of those early internet build your own website hosting services. Yeah, it had the main thing you need to know about this website is it had a GIF at the top that said, "Welcome to my Pokemon world, open 24 hours." Because I wanted people to know if they came to my website, they would be able to return at any hour, any day.
That's very convenient.
And it would still be there.
A different mentality. Like, I mean, it's funny now, but that's like literally a consideration.
Oh, yeah. It was hard to wrap your head around, like the permanence of the internet. Bo, you did find that website using the Wayback Machine, right?
I did. There's like 2 or 3. Basically, there's like one good archive of it, and like a lot of the images and stuff are broken, but you can at least see it.
I want this to be shared in the chat.
Yeah, I think you should dig that up and drop that in chat. If you
can. While we're talking, see if you can find it. We'll drop it in the chat. Bo showed us this at work like a month or several months ago, and it was honestly like the highlight of my month.
Funny.
Finding this relic of like GeoCities era, like build your own websites with like the black background, the hit counter on the bottom, the guest book where you can sign. That idea that you went to a website and it was like. People had such a hard time like viewing the internet as if it wasn't like a digital storefront where you were like entering someone's home and then had to like leave your mark on it. Oh man, what a great time. So it sounds like Hypnospace.
It's in the chat. I've dropped it in there.
It looks like it got moderated out. Why don't you hand it to me?
Wisely moderated out.
Oh, Bo's not a mod. Let's mod Bo and let him post that.
What's that about?
I'll wrap up my discussion. Like, this game is like that website, but you are basically at least the first thing I did in this game is, because I am an enforcer and I'm basically like, I get paid by whatever, I forget what the corporate entity is called, but it's a play on Microsoft. They give you like their fake currency for every like successful copyright strike or harassment strike or whatever you find online. And the very first thing I did was there's like this in this universe there's a cartoon fish. Someone reported that there were people violating copyright law by using its likeness on their websites, and so I did an investigation, and I like in this web browser essentially Googled the name of this cartoon fish, and it indexed a bunch of pages for me that, you know, where these her story style is maybe a good comparison. And there are like hundreds of fake web pages these guys have made. And it indexed all the pages where these terms appeared, and I clicked on the first one, and it was like a grade school like fan art, like a classroom put up their fan drawings or like these creative drawings they made of this character. It's this really like earnest, cute, innocent expression of admiration for this cartoon character, and you you enforce whatever rules you're trying to enforce by using this like actual like hammer cursor, and you smash the images of these like really cute like awful drawings of this cartoon, and I'm basically like trying to get kids into trouble for drawing Mickey Mouse, and it's very funny and hyper surreal and extremely specific in the ways it evokes like memories of a very specific time in the early days of the internet. It's crazy. It's
like the whole soundtrack vaporwave. It feels like it.
It's pretty vaporwavy, but it also it also has some really great MIDI stuff that will bring back some memories. So. Yeah, I linked to Hypnospace Outlaw in the chat, so scroll up a bit if you want to see the trailer for yourself. It's bonkers. It's very, very good. Full disclosure, one of the writers on that game sometimes contributes columns for the magazine and has written some Dark Souls pieces for us, which are also very good. But yeah, go check it out. It's so much fun. I can't wait to keep playing more of it. That said, let's move on to our first topic at hand, which is multiple topics in one. A lot of shit happened this week.
It's been crazy.
It's been wild.
2019's been wild. Let's be real. 2019 has been week after week of just like, when does it end?
Guys, it's like March already. Did you realize that?
I know.
Oh, that's fucked up, actually. I'm just realizing.
The year's already a quarter over.
No. Yes? Well, I mean, that's kind of a relief, honestly. Like, even if it's Hell World, this year feels faster than last year.
Yeah, 2018 was like 3 years long, and so far, the 3 months of 2019 have been about a week long.
Thank goodness. So yeah, a lot of shit happened over the last week or two, and let's just start off. Like this morning, I never thought I would hear this. Dwarf Fortress is coming to Steam. Dwarf Fortress. A game famous for its ASCII graphics that's in perpetual development. And I think like Wes interviewed the creator and said something. He's basically he's never going to stop developing this game. And he's basically attempting to simulate reality or existence, procedurally simulated existence. Is coming to Steam with new graphics and workshop support. Any of you guys play Dwarf Fortress? Have you dabbled?
Yeah, I've tried penetrating into it. It is the most impenetrable game I've ever played. And I like...
You made it further than I did, which is I looked it up one time. Actually, one time I was writing a story about a mod that gave it like 3D graphics, and I tried playing it, and it was incomprehensible.
Oh God, yeah, no, you need a degree. Like you'd have to go to university to play this game adequately. I played, for maybe, 12 hours, too many hours. Not that the game isn't good. Like I love the stories. I love that there's a community that can play this game and that understands it. But there's so much to learn. I prefer a little bit more accessible roguelikes.
Well, hell, maybe this graphical update, some workshop support will make it easier to get into. And that's exciting to me. So. Hooray.
Yeah, to be clear, the graphical update is like still not good graphics. It's just like extremely basic graphics.
Yes.
Well, yeah, like I think what's great about it, so like I'm a big fan of Caves of Cud. I've talked about it on the show before, which is another sort of ASCII. How do you say
ASCII,
that word?
ASCII?
Have you guys ever said that out loud?
I say ASCII.
That happens to me all the
ASCII?
time.
Okay, I say ASCII or ASCII. I just say some. I just try. Anyway, ASCII. That makes sense. Okay. Anyway, like Caves of Cut is like another rogue like that. Sort of. In fact, it used to have that graphics, and then now they've done over to actual sprite work, and I like that aesthetic. What's cool about this new sort of graphic overhaul that will be available for the Steam version, and I think it's optional, by the way, is that like it's really hard when you're looking at like an ampersand and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to know that that's a minotaur. You know what I mean? Whereas if you have sprite work where it's still very evocative of that style, of that ASCII style, but at least the sprites are unique to one another and they're done in a way where you can kind of almost infer. Like Caves of Cut is like that. You can look and be like, oh, this is a tree, even though it's like like one color and it's 4 pixels tall. You're like, it looks like a tree. I understand. You know what I mean? And I'm pro that. Like,
sure.
If you're hardcore and you're like, oh, ASCII or bust, I don't like you, and we won't go on.
Called out. All right.
Yeah, ASCII fans, come at me. There's gonna be a guy who role plays as an ASCII character in my Twitter mentions.
Oh my god, the ASCII subreddit is just gonna be off the charts.
Do you think there's an ASCII subreddit?
There's gotta be.
Probably.
That's cool news. Also in the news, Jade Raymond, formerly a producer at Ubisoft who worked on the first 2 Assassin's Creed games, as well as Splinter Cell, Blacklist, Watch Dogs, before moving on to Electronic Arts, where she worked on those Star Wars projects that I think aren't seeing the light of day. She left EA and has now announced that she's joining Google as VP, not vice president of the whole company, mind you, but as a mysterious VP of a new division or unknown division of Google. This coincides, interestingly, with Google's GDC Game Developers Conference keynote happening next week, and Google has been testing a streaming service, and Assassin's Creed Odyssey is already playable on that service. And they recently filed a patent for a game controller notification system. Some people made like mock-ups of this controller that were sort of circulated as actual mock-ups, but they are not official, just so you know. We do know that we're going to find out whatever the hell Google's gaming initiative looks like, or at least their first thrust will look like, next week, and I have no idea what to expect from that. Whether it's
I'm going to be at that panel or talk, or cool. I guess it's a keynote or something, and I'll be finding out what Google is working on. I'm guessing it's going to be some type of streaming box thing for games, I guess. But it kind of leans into this sort of new era of people are looking for a Netflix for gaming, where you pay like a subscription service to get access to games, and it really depends a lot on how much this. I mean, there's obviously a lot of hardware factors leading into this, between both the hardware to stream it as well as internet infrastructure, and basically do people have the bandwidth needed to play these games at any sort of playable level, which it's doable. Like, there are streaming services out there that work pretty well, and they have for a while, but for the most part, like, you need to have a really strong internet connection. Like, you need to have the hardware on your end isn't quite as important, because the whole point is like being able to just stream it to you rather than having to play the game yourself. But yeah, the thing about streaming services is there's kind of 2 sides to it. One is the idea of them being streamed from the cloud. The other is the idea of access to games on a subscription-based model. And I think that, depending on how much it takes off, will be a really big question that the games industry is going to have to grapple with over the next 2 to 10 years or however long it takes to take off, assuming it does, because we've already seen the publishing model shift from big publishers to the indie publishing model, to even self-publishing and things like that. How is the industry going to shift once you get into these services where, think about how Spotify has affected the music industry. Like, sure, small indie artists get a lot more exposure because people can just stream their music and they get thousands or millions of streams, but Spotify pays them very, very little for all of those streams.
Yeah.
And so is it good or bad for these small indie devs or, indie artists, and then in our case, indie developers, if their game, is put on this service? Like, what happens in a future where you have to be on, Gamify, whatever we're going to call it, whatever, Spotify for games, Gamify Flicks.
There you go.
And where you have to be on that for your game to survive, much in the way that like you pretty much at least for a long time had to be on Steam if you wanted to be successful. What happens when that's the case, but also you get paid very, very little for being on there? So we don't have the answers to this right now. It's not even really a thing yet, but it's definitely a question that the industry is going to have to grapple with as it becomes more and more prominent.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What still sort of keeps a question mark above my head about this is I don't know why I just made a quest giver allusion to World of Warcraft. But anyway, what is Jade? We're talking specifically about Jade joining Google as a VP, and like all of this makes sense. Like, Google making a console or some kind of streaming platform, any kind of platform, makes perfect sense. What still makes me curious is what her role in that is because she's a game developer, not a system engineer, or you know what I mean. Like, she's someone that you would traditionally put alongside like the development of games, not the development of systems. And so I'm like, if she's going to join Google as a VP, does this also mean that Google is looking at sort of maybe like doing something like what Amazon's been trying for a long time with their game development initiatives, is getting into game development themselves, and maybe she's going to be heading up that?
Wouldn't be surprising.
Could be. Yeah. It wouldn't. I mean, exactly like you said, based on her credentials, that's what it would suggest. Obviously, I don't know. I have no idea what she's doing there, but that would make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess we'll find out in a week because we're all going to be at GDC.
Tuesday, I think, is that keynote.
Yeah, Tuesday? It is. It's Tuesday morning.
All right.
Right. I'm going to be in the air.
I will also be in the sky.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be there. And in your eye, I don't know. Wanted to rhyme.
It's okay. You don't always have to rhyme. It's okay. Sometimes it's okay not to follow the instinct.
Don't I though?
Segue. Borderlands.
Another big thing that happened. Sure.
Yeah. They keep coming.
Speaking of streaming, I love streaming bullets into enemies.
That's your official. You're volunteering to explain what's going on with this, Steve. Borderlands.
Oh God,
Gearbox.
I am literally pulling up the news article.
Oh my God.
Gearbox tweeted the other day a very obvious tweet, by the way.
Yeah.
That March 28th in Boston, Massachusetts, which coincides, if you're not familiar with this, that's PAX East. The Penny Arcade Expo East happens during that time. And so they tweeted this sort of innocuous image, and it looks like the Borderlands desert, and it's a road sign. It says March 28th, Boston, Massachusetts. And it's the cel-shaded look. It just looks like Borderlands. They've been teasing this for a long time now. I think everyone knew that Borderlands was in development. So this is just Gearbox basically teasing the announcement that we can expect to see at the end of the month.
It should be noted that in the image, like the exit sign says exit 3 at the top of this image. So it's it's like, it's gonna happen. It's pretty much, we're gonna get something about Borderlands 3. And if we don't, it's gonna be a massive fuck you.
Right.
Because people are pretty excited about this game. It's gonna be so fascinating. We'll talk about, like, it'll maybe come to light when we talk about the Division. Because Borderlands 2 especially sort of like I feel like it set into motion or made other developers realize that this kind of looter shooter ongoing development with all the expansions it got, multiplayer, it was possible as a first person shooter. So what does Borderlands 3 look like post Destiny 2, post Division 2?
Exactly, right?
It's a tall order, right? They're going to have to really impress, I think.
So I, for one, am really hoping that they don't do Borderlands meets Destiny. If this is like a live service, like constantly grinding kind of, like following this trend that it's sort of in a lot of ways probably kicked off, I'll be disappointed. What I would love is for Gearbox to give the big middle finger to all those games and say, no, we're going back and we're doing basically Borderlands 3 in the style of Borderlands 2, which is a 4-player co-op adventure. It doesn't have any of the sort of games as a service crap that we've been seeing a lot of. What we're going to be doing is just we're making another great single player campaign with sort of a tail on it. Like those were games that you would play after you beat them,
right?
Certainly, but they weren't built in the same way. You know, there's not like the communal social spaces where you're going back and hanging out with and seeing all these strangers in one area kind of thing. I would love it if they did that and then just stuck with like an expansion, like the way that they handled expansions, especially because the way that they handled expansions allowed them to do really interesting things with those expansions where I couldn't see like Destiny one day being like, oh, we're doing an expansion where everyone's stuck in a role-playing game that the drifter is narrating. Like it would never work. But in Borderlands, it makes like perfect kind of sense. So I'm excited to see what they have to say. I hope Claptrap dies in the first 5 minutes.
Yes, that'd be fucking awesome. It's, oh my God, the cover. You know how they always have a guy shooting himself? It's just Claptrap.
It's just Claptrap.
He has 3 robot arms anyway, or could have one feasibly. So to fit with the theme. Pretty exciting. Let's run through these last couple ones real quick. I'm just going to list them off basically and link to them in chat and tell you where to go read more. Rendon, PlayerUnknown Green, is leaving PUBG development, but staying at PUBG Core, moving into a new role in Amsterdam under the PUBG Special Projects Unit, whatever the hell that means. We don't really know what that means quite yet, but kind of stepping back from Top Dog and moving on to greener pastures, but PUBG is not over, so don't worry. I like this one. Dragon's Dogma, getting a Netflix anime, and hopefully that means... Steven, you're happy about this?
That was me kissing the sky. Yeah, because it has to mean Dragon's Dogma too.
Exactly. And it especially because Capcom, as we said on our website, has sort of entered this new golden age, with Devil May Cry 5, which is fucking awesome, and Resident Evil 2 Remake, fucking awesome.
And Dragon's Dogma is coming out on the Switch in April, and I just have to imagine it's going to do great, as long as like the ports sound. But like, who wouldn't want to play that game on the go?
Definitely. Exciting stuff. One more, Rising Storm developer, the Rising Storm developer, Antimatter Games, is making a new persistent first-person shooter for 80 players. That's not totally exciting for me, but what is exciting for me is like sort of the premise is a Cold War gone wrong. It's called, 83, and it's set in an alternate history Cold War that, quote, got hot. And there's a trailer, I'll link to it. That's cool. They make good first-person shooters, so that's an interesting premise. And 80-player persistent shooter, don't know quite what that means, and excited to see more about that in the future. But let's move on to the meat and potatoes of today's show. Halo. Halo.
Me you're looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was about to do it.
Oh, perfect. Halo, the Master Chief Collection, was announced for PC, and for some people, even better, it was announced that it's coming to Steam. And that's a pretty big deal because Microsoft, a couple years back with their UWA initiative, Universal Windows Applications, kind of pulled back and wanted everything to live in the Microsoft Store and live in the Windows 10 environment specifically. And is this like one of their first party games that is on that isn't exclusive to the Microsoft Store on PC in a while? As far as
I think it is.
I think so. Yeah.
So that's amazing. Just
also because the Microsoft Store really sucks.
It is fucking awful.
So bad.
We've been saying it for years.
They must have realized it, right? Because like I know Phil Spencer made comments very recently saying like, we get it, it sucks, we're trying to fix it. And I think in the meantime they've just realized like, why would we shoot ourselves in the foot by releasing these games on this store that are obviously going to impact sales? I guarantee you that people are passing up on Microsoft exclusives because they don't want to have to deal with the storefront. And I think it just makes sense. Put it on Steam, put it on the biggest platform. And you know, Microsoft has been so big with sharing lately, like working with Switch and like, you know, flinging mud Sony's direction when it comes to cross-play initiatives and stuff like that. I think Microsoft is like, tear down these walls. Let's just put things where they're gonna succeed the best. And so it makes no sense to try and limit it to the Microsoft Store. Remember that sad story of that kid that bought Call of Duty, but he bought it on the Microsoft Store, and the servers didn't share with Steam servers, and so there was like 4 people playing Call of Duty.
What a nightmare. But no more sad stories. It's on Steam, but a couple caveats, like the PC version rollout will be different than the initial bundle of pretty much everything at once that the Xbox One saw. We're going to open up with another new announcement. Halo Reach will be the first game to release in the Master Chief Collection. We don't have a date. We do know that it's later this year. And following that, they will release chronologically, starting with Halo, onto Halo 2, Halo 3, ODST, and then ending with Halo 4. Halo 5 is not part of this collection, and nothing was announced.
Who cares?
Regarding Halo. Yeah, I personally don't, but it would be nice to have. I want to check it out purely out of curiosity.
If you like Halo 5 and you're in the chat, speak up so we know to ban you.
But also underlined in this announcement was that they're doing this because they want PC standard features to be included. They want to do it right. It could just be marketing talk, and they don't need that time. I don't know. Who fucking knows? But we're gonna see stuff like FOV sliders, 4K resolution support. I mean, ultra wide monitor support. That's big.
Rad.
We got adjustable frame rates, so it's not clear if we'll be able to go over 60 or what. Hopefully, because I don't know. I'm one of those snobby guys who's got a 144 hertz monitor that just my eyes bleed if it goes below 60. So we'll see. But big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Let me hear it. Let me just hear what you feel and think about this announcement. Is it overdue? Are you
I would say it's overdue. I'm so excited that it's happening now. I think now is the perfect time. I'm totally ready to just re-experience the entire sort of Halo. I guess this is a quintilogy if it's 5 games. Reach and ODST makes it 5. I hope that there's not so much time in between the releases.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the staggered release schedule. I'm a little bit bummed that Reach comes first. Just because that's probably lower down on my totem pole of which Halo games I want to play. But I hope that it's if it's a couple of months or whatever, that's totally fine by me. If it ends up being this thing where it's 6 months to a year between each release, then I'm a little bit bummed about that, because that could mean theoretically Halo 3, which is the one that I'm the most excited for, could be 5 years away. And so that's.
Have they said how I'm not really sure what the question is, but how it is, if it's coming in a staggered release, is what I'm trying to say. If it's coming in a staggered release, is it you buy the Master Chief Collection and then you get access to them? It's like buying a season pass, or is it
unclear?
Buy them individually?
Yeah,
unclear at the moment.
Because that was sort of the point of when Master Chief Collection originally happened on console or on Xbox. It was it was a collection. You bought the one thing and you got all the games, and they were there and they all got the HD treatment. And
it's also worth pointing out that the Master Chief Collection on console was a goddamn disaster for almost a year. It was unplayable multiplayer. So hopefully that was just the one, they fixed that problem on the consoles and it's not going to replicate on the PC port, but it's something to keep in mind, depending on how they want to do this and how they want to monetize it and roll it all out.
Right. It's gonna be interesting, and I hope it happens. I hope we get up to Halo 3 before 2009's up. I would be very bummed if it takes how long, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Did you guys play what was your first experience playing Halo? Was it on the PC? Because the first 2 did come to PC, or were you one of those Xbox kids?
I was Xbox.
I was Xbox,
Yeah, Halo is the game that I got an Xbox at launch when I was a kid, and I didn't know anything about any of the games. I was just hey, Xbox is coming out. It launched right around my birthday, so I was this is what I want for my birthday. Thankfully, my parents were nice and got it for me, and they let me pick which bundle to get. And one of the bundles had like Oddworld and like something else, and then like one of the games had this game called Halo, and I was like, had never heard of it, obviously, because it didn't exist. I didn't know anything about Bungie or like the history of Marathon. Like, didn't know anything about that. I was like, sure, this sounds like a whatever. It's a shooter, cool. I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14, who knows? I ends up being like greatest decision ever. It was like, wow, on a whim, I picked this game Halo, and it turned out to be like the biggest shooter of like the generation.
Yes.
And yeah, that was the game that my friends and I would lug our big honking Xboxes over to each other's houses and set up 4 TVs in a little diamond shape to play 16-player multiplayer.
Yeah. Just the golden years of multiplayer.
Yes. Yeah. It was the same for me. I think Halo 2 was the one that I really started getting into.
Yeah.
Like I played Halo 1 and loved it, but then Halo 2 was when I was like fully on board for that series, had the friends that were hyped for it. And like that was probably one of the most defining gaming experiences I've ever had in my entire life. Halo 2 and 3, like I went to LAN parties that held in community centers where they had tournament. Like I was so invested in that game, that series of games. And so like, yeah, I'm real excited to experience some childhood nostalgia, some teenage nostalgia, I guess.
I was in a youth group, and I'm not a Christian man, but I was in a youth group. I wasn't.
But you heard they had Halo,
and like we would go there. The guy would be like, "All right, just be kind to each other. All right, let's play Halo." We play Halo every Sunday. And that's how I made some of my best friends. We started our own tournaments like outside of that, and it kind of just really led to my investment in PC gaming too, because I noticed like, I don't know, Halo, the camaraderie I felt playing those multiplayer games kind of bled into Counter-Strike and things that came on later. So it was a really defining moment, I think, for a lot of people. But I want to know definitively, we're gonna have this whole 5 new games just in our lap. What's your favorite? What's your favorite, and why?
I think my ranking is the definitive list.
Okay.
Which is, it goes Halo 1.
Yes.
Everything else, and then Halo 4.
Halo 4 is the last.
Halo 4 is at the bottom.
Halo 4 is the bottom.
Well, I haven't played Halo 4. Actually, I started playing Halo 4, and I like stopped.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it's
Halo 5 is on the Xbox
This is not
One.
counting Halo 5 because I haven't played it at all.
Neither do I.
So
yeah, Halo 5
games,
is the Xbox One. Halo 4 was the last Halo on the 360, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Halo 4 is when they introduced, like, that's where the Master Chief gets woken up from cryo sleep, and there's like the
Prometheans? Is that what they're called?
I don't even know.
the weird new aliens
that Mass
that
Effect?
just mysterious. Oh god, Prometheans are Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Are they called Prometheans though? There's something pro something.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Not cool.
I completely agree. Like if we're talking about multiplayer, I put Halo 3 at the top. Halo 3 multiplayer was like exquisite. It was so good. And then for campaigns, I'd say Halo 1. But then the rest.
I was talking about the campaigns. Multiplayer, like, yeah, it's 2 or 3 was the multiplayer, definitely. Like I mean, that was the genesis of Xbox Live, really, of like, for me, of like playing online gaming, period.
I think I'm with you there. I think 2 and 3, like 1 will always be this like cherished memory, especially like the latter PC release, or was it around the same time? I don't know. Like we actually found a way to install or hide the executable for Halo 1 on my high school's servers. We found like a backdoor essentially.
Nice.
And so we could access Halo from any computer in the school, and we would just like have impromptu matches during computer lab or library or whatever. Anyway, don't tell. But Halo 2 and 3, do you guys remember what a fucking revelation? Like, in the end, it maybe wasn't the best decision for the series, but how cool dual wielding was when it came out. What a cool thing that was.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Even the way that it wasn't just like simple dual wielding. I mean, if you had like the dual SMGs, you would just spray and pray. But like if you had like the one that you charged up and then released and it would pop their shields, and then you had like the needler, like the way that you were having to like hold one joystick, like hold one trigger and then the other one, like it just, I don't know. It was great. Dual wielding was awesome. I loved it. I thought, do people hate dual wielding?
I don't know. There's some dual wielding dissenters in the mix, or at least like how various Halos handle dual wielding. I can't remember the details of that. But I can't be mad at it.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a point too where like I remember when Halo 4 came out, like the way the multiplayer felt was such a travesty at the time, going from Halo 3. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, enough time has passed. I'm no longer like emotionally invested in either of those games at that level where I'm like, I'm willing to play Halo 4 and see how the multiplayer is. And like, I get that there was a bunch of things that were wrong with it, or people didn't like that how they changed it. It had the loadout system and stuff, but like, I don't know. Dual wielding was great. I mean, the Forge for Halo 3, like the multiplayer, customize your own, like it was just this sandbox playground that you had was so cool. The other thing that I think Halo 3 was so revolutionary and why I'm so passionate about that game was that was also the game that really incorporated clipping and replaying. So like you would do like these amazing grenade, like you'd throw a sticky grenade across the map and you'd stick a guy and you'd be like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. And you could go into the replay, but the replay wasn't just like a video that it recorded. It was like a scene, like a 3D rendered scene that you could then move around in. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so like you could make these replay videos and like shoot the angles specifically how you wanted to do it. And like living those moments, like that was something that me and my friends also embraced wholeheartedly. Like every day I'd get home from school and we'd be sharing clips with one another and being like, oh my god, check out this amazing like kill I got. And the way that it just built this online ecosystem of I don't know, sharing and playing together was so impressive for its time. Like Halo 3 was outrageous.
I think I'm with you there. You convinced me. But campaign wise, I think for me ODST stands out, if only for that quiet overworld and feeling like the contrast of like being this like 7-8 foot tall warrior to an average short dude setting. So when you walked up to the Covenant, they looked massive, and you went down in a couple hits as opposed to with a beating, and that was a really cool thing. Also to get these episodic stories where you sort of like you were able to be empowered and experience more than just being like a weak soldier in those, and see different like aspects of the universe. So for me, that's the best campaign. But I don't know, those first couple are still pretty memorable. I do want to know, are there any multiplayer maps in particular? Because I think our memories of these games are at least so inextricably tied. The campaigns are one thing, but inextricably tied to the multiplayer, and specifically like the way we would play it in our particular like groups of friends. Were there any maps and modes that were your go-to back in the day?
Zombies, man.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Zombies? I like the regular modes. When it comes to maps, like I mean, like Blood Gulch is just so perfect. Like that, what a perfect battlefield. I loved it so much. The fact that like Red versus Blue, that animated series, had so many episodes, like 4 seasons that just took place on this one map, and they were able to mine. So like it to me, it just exemplifies like what a perfect creation Blood Gulch was. But my personal favorites are both from Halo 3. Actually, one of them is sort of a recreation from a Halo 2 map, but I love, in Halo 2 it was called Zanzibar, in Halo 3 it's called Last Resort. It has like the giant wheel that spins, the beachhead. Like I loved that map. I really loved like the big epic maps that really loaned themselves well to big battles. And so the other one I loved too was like Valhalla, where you had like the 2 towers on either end of a canyon. It was kind of Blood Gulch-esque, but just such an enormous space. You had the vehicle play, people were in Banshees. Like there was just so much going on in those maps, and those maps have always been my favorite. I've always, even like with Battlefield, like I prefer big maps with lots going on.
I feel you there.
Yeah, my favorites, obviously Blood Gulch is an all-time. It's just a top-tier map. I really loved Lockout on Halo 2. That was an outstanding map. I think it got remade in one of the later ones, but it was never quite the same.
It was definitely in 3, if I recall. It was sort of a go-to. Halos.
But yeah, Lockout was outstanding. I remember really liking, I think this was in 3, a mode that would pop up a lot in the matchmaking, and I think some people hated it because it popped up so much, but I really liked it. It was Shoddy Snipers on the Pit.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
That was great.
Great mode.
Anything with snipers, and those sniper rifles were amazing.
Defined.
The fact that they had the ricochet was so ahead of its time too. Like there's so much about Halo that was so ahead of its time. I don't know if you guys ever seen that replay of someone who like throws a grenade and it blows up and throws like it forces the sniper through the air towards him and he catches it and then headshots a guy. Have you ever seen that replay?
Yeah.
And it's like one of the greatest plays of all time. I love Halo.
I also love Halo. This one, I'm gonna give one shot because you guys named my favorites, Blood Gulch and Lockout, but Battle Creek from OG Halo.
Oh yeah,
Battle Creek. I just loved. It felt like a sort of concentrated Blood Gulch, like a Blood Gulch without the vehicles, much more arena based, where two bases, those portals on either end, and just that kind of creek with some obstacles running through it. A lot of interesting terrain. It felt like a revelation. Like I felt like I was hacking the game when I was a young dumb gamer. Like being able to find the route, how to like jump, crouch, and get on top of each base at the at specific points.
Yeah. Were you playing that in your mind? Is that map best as just like a Slayer map, or like for CTF or something?
I think it's a good. It's pretty like it's good Slayer, but it's also a pretty decent CTF for if you're looking for like a quick, faster pace CTF. Because Blood Gulch CTF would go for sometimes.
Oh, it takes forever.
An hour.
Yeah,
it was great.
So to me, I really loved Battle Creek CTF because like it felt. In my mind, it almost feels like a hockey game. The way you had the goal is there, but you could like go behind the goal, and it's like, was your route going out the back and then through the back, or going straight through the middle? Like all of these different routes were all short. Like they one wasn't really longer than the other, whether you went straight or backwards. But it's like, you know, taking the portal felt like you were taking a shortcut, but you actually weren't, because just running through the middle was just as fast.
Yes.
And I don't know, that was a great map for sure.
Loved it. Anyway, I feel like I don't typically consider myself like nostalgia is violence to me, but this is like the one exception I'm willing to make because it is so personal to, I think, a specific like 10-year generation of people who like really grew up during a specific era, and we finally get it on PC. It's extremely exciting and an intense relief. So 10 years of Halo, we'll finally be able to write about it, make all sorts of cool content and talk about it.
It'll be interesting once they're all out to see where the community settles, because I don't think I'm sure people are going to play all of them. Multiplayer, I'm talking about specifically here, but like I'm sure like Halo 3 is going to probably be like the more popular one. Probably Halo 1 will have, but it'll be interesting to sort of see which one becomes the dominant multiplayer experience and which ones kind of fall by the wayside. But yeah, like I can't wait. I mean, I know Halo 1 and 2 were out on PC. I never played them. I played the first one on PC. I haven't played the other one on PC. But like, yeah, for me, again, like just playing Halo 3 on PC is gonna be so much fun. I hope that like it rekindles a bit of that camaraderie I felt back then, where I was playing with my friends every day and hanging out, and just, you know, Halo was like the go-to game every day, all day. So
it's gonna be go-to again. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, hopefully.
Pretty exciting. Let's move on to our final topic of the day. Steve, you and I have been playing a little game called The Division 2. I said at the top of the show, it's out if you paid a little extra money for those special versions. And it's coming out on Friday for everyone. And I want to know, I mean, I reviewed the first Division when it came out a couple years ago, and it was an interesting, like a good cover shooter in a pretty world, even if it was a bit samey and overlaid by a dumb as hell Clancy verse story. But the looter shooter part of it didn't really take shape immediately. It took 2 years of like sort of ongoing development to get to a good spot in the end game. So knowing that and coming off the end of Anthem, which totally botched, it's progression and RPG systems, pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Let me know, like, how's the Division 2 feeling for you?
I love it. I'm having a great time with it. I'll say, like, you know, my big fear going into the Division 2 was, anyone who played Destiny was really frustrated by Destiny 2 because Destiny 2 just felt like a step back. And now it took a full year until Destiny 2 got good, like last September with the Forsaken update. And that was sort of like, oh, finally this is like the good Destiny 2. But it felt like Destiny 2 just completely relived Destiny 1, which was the same thing. Destiny 1 was just not that great until The Taken King came out a year later. Destiny 2 is the exact same thing. It wasn't that great. It didn't build off of any of the greatness of Destiny 1. It started from scratch and reinvented the wheel in the worst way. I was worried that the Division 2 was going to do the same thing. It was going to learn no lessons from the Division 1, but that isn't the case. It feels like it has learned every lesson from the Division 1 and then added a bunch of new stuff that didn't even need to be in the Division, like the settlement system and all this stuff. So it feels fantastic. There's so much going on. The game feels incredibly meaty. It's the kind of game that you want to also maybe not just rush to level 30.
Yeah.
And be done with. Like, it's a game where you can just play and enjoy it, and the loot's interesting. Well, it's fun to get.
It's still guns. It's just guns.
Yeah, and like I'm at a low enough level where I'm just picking up knee pads that are marginally stronger than the last pair of knee pads I had. But like, it's if you like the Division and want more of it, even better and more refined, the Division 2 is like probably the most competent loot shooter so far that I've ever played at release.
Yes.
They always release bad.
Yeah.
And this one feels really good out of the gate.
I mean, we're pretty early on. Like, I'm level 12 or 8 or 9 or something, right?
Yeah.
And there's, like you said, 30 before you hit the end game, and a whole new enemy faction, the Black Tusk, unlocks, and some end game activities and so on. So it might still suck. There might be something there that trips us up, or some kind of like grindy or boring loop that we hit. But the body of this game is so much more interesting and so much more engaging than what the Division 2, or excuse me, the original Division was, even after it got all its updates. The amount of stuff available to you at any given moment, like you said, just wandering the map, it feels so much more dynamic. The NPCs are actually like performing tasks that you can sort of, like gathering water or food, you can help them and get small XP rewards for that. You can do a ton of side missions, which are all pretty darn competent and interesting, at least so far. There are these kind of, I don't know if you'd call them like compare them to Destiny 2's like live events or public events, where you might see like a public execution happening that you prevent, or supply drops come in and you can choose to engage with them or not, and fend off waves of enemies with specific objective types. And then there's the actual story missions, which are... How many of you played? You've only played like 2 or 3, you said?
I've played like 3. They've been really good so far.
Yeah, like they move through Washington, D.C. The setting, I think, is like less visually interesting than Manhattan, or less evocative of mood and tone.
Yeah, it misses like that somber sort of austere tone of like, snowed in Manhattan. It's a bit more generic in its apocalyptic aesthetic, I guess. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's still good. Like I think it's still pretty good, and especially when you get to, I don't know where it is, but some of the more open areas with public parks and shrubbery, and but these missions are really, there's some fun set pieces in there, and I won't spoil it for you, but I did link to Sam Roberts, who's reviewing it for us, his review in progress. He goes into some of the early missions, which go through some museums, and like there's some really creative ways it mixes up the set pieces visually.
I'll say like, oh no, sorry, I don't mean to like jump in over top of you. Like, I totally agree. Like Manhattan in the winter is a more interesting locale. Yeah. I think though that like the diversity of what's going on in DC is incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I know they put a lot of effort into making it, it's like a 1-to-1 representation of downtown DC. It feels that way. I've never been to DC, but it feels, pretty 1-to-1. But like everything that you can stop and look at is visually interesting.
Yes.
Everything feels bespoke and and unique, where to the point where like it's not like you're running down a street and seeing like generic coffee shop every 2 blocks. Everything, like if you're seeing a cafe, that cafe like almost tells this visual story to it. A lot of times you can enter into those buildings, not everything, you know, it's kind of like the Division 1. Some areas you can enter into, other areas are just sort of just the facade, the outer facade that you can walk by. But then like the density of sort of these areas, like there's, you know, every block will have multiple alleys or a building that you can go into, and there's loot that you can find there, or there's underground tunnels and entrances I've found that lead through like, you know, subway tunnels and into, you know, dilapidated subway stations. And then you go into these main missions and they have these incredibly like immaculately crafted set pieces where you're fighting through Air Force museums and television stations, and you know, like it's just the density of the environments and the detail is actually astounding to me. Like it is outrageously mind-blowing to me. You know, everything else aside, that is one of the most coherent, incredible worlds I've ever seen built in a video game.
Yeah, even if it was like a linear shooter without looter mechanics that like give you a reason to go back and play the missions over and over and over. I think this would be a very good, if it was released in like 2005, this would be like lauded as a very good cover shooter because of like how bespoke these levels are and detailed. There's like someone made that. There's like a level where you move again, like you're going through a museum, and someone made this like amazing steam engine, and it's just sitting in sort of this corner that you don't really fight in, and it's just there to look at and to serve the setting, and it's immaculately detailed. And it's like nice to look at. It's amazing. And that permeates, like you said, like every inch of that game. The setting is incredibly realized, and I think the combat is a very good extension of what the first game offered. Some of the abilities, the abilities pair in really, really interesting ways. Some of them are less. I'm not seeing a utility for some of them quite yet, but a favorite thing I like to do with if I'm playing with another person is like someone will have a roller mine, and you can see where the roller mine is going to explode before it gets there. So someone will send a roller mine in, and then I'll use like my gas gun to, right when it's about to land and explode, I'll shoot some gas out, like these pockets of gas that ignite the whole area and set it on fire and just like wipe everyone out. Some pretty cool abilities like that. What are you rolling with?
So like you were saying, some of the abilities are a little bit lackluster. I have one of those abilities that's a little lackluster. So like I you know, I have the basic turret. You can throw it, and then it you know, locks into enemies and starts gunning them down. And I just use that to kind of keep fire suppression, because that thing just unloads on whatever. Yeah, it's great to just pin enemies down. But then the first ability I got was like this little camera drone thing that flies around and like blinds enemies with their flash. I was laughing because it looks like it just takes pictures of them, and I like to in my head canon, what happens is they get distracted posing for the camera, and that's what lets me get the jump on them. But no, it just blinds them, and then they walk around like, oh, I can't see anything, and then they're really easy to gun down. The way that it works though is it operates on like this very strict sort of line of movement that you create. So you like mark up to 4 targets, and then it goes from target to target. But if there's an obstruction in between one of those targets, it'll just run straight into that and blow up. So like lots of times I've like been behind a car and I've like marked my 4 targets, and then I've like gone to let it go, and it's just hit the roof of the car and blown up, and then it doesn't do any of its abilities.
And you have a cooldown for like 2 minutes.
Then I have this long ass cooldown, so I'm like, shit, this is actually like a pointless ability, and I don't like using it that much. But now that I've sort of opened up some of the main missions, once you do main missions, you unlock other abilities. So now I have like the chem gun that shoots the riot foam, which is super fun. Like you just encase guys in riot foam, and then they're stuck there, and it's basically the same ability as this homing thing, except for its area of effect. So it's a little bit trickier to sort of get as many enemies in one shot. Whereas this thing, I could target like 4 guys all the way across the room, but then it would run into something and blow up.
Yay.
I find the combat banging. I think like one thing that I really want to call out is like, I feel like the AI is actually really good in this game. And it's so rare to play a first-person shooter or a shooter, especially like a loot shooter that feels like it actually has intelligent AI. And I guess, you know, the Division being more of a tactical shooter, that would make sense. Whereas like Destiny, enemies can kind of just stand around, ogres can just shoot their eye lasers at you or whatever. But like they take cover, which, you know, of course you would expect them to take cover in a cover shooter, but the way that they are constantly trying to flank you, they're moving against you, they're very aggressive. You know, there's this sort of typical, like a faction will have several different types of enemies. So there's the hyenas are sort of one of the first factions you meet, and they're like gang members. And, you know, there's this typical sort of like run and gun dude, but then there's these guys that like take a hit of drugs and then they just run at you straight for you, and like that, you know, will cause you to panic because you have to focus down those guys first. But then, you know, in the back of like their party, there'll be a guy who will have like a remote RC car with explosives on it, and he'll start driving it towards you, and you have to shoot that and blow that up before he like gets it to you. There's guys with like mortars, like grenade launchers, and they'll be launching grenades at you. So like there's a lot going on in combat. It can really kick your ass even on the basic difficulty if you're not constantly moving, and if you get into a really bad spot, like you're just fucked. And but I even love like the personality of these different factions. So like, not to, you know, just take a dump on Anthem, but like
it's okay,
Anthem has two, but I'm going to take a dump on Anthem. Anthem has like two sort of humanoid factions, and they are indistinguishable. They both just stand out in the open. And in fact, I was testing a bug yesterday, and I needed to let them shoot me, so I was just standing out in the open letting them shoot me. And they're not even good at shooting you consistently. Like they'll shoot at you for like a second, and then they'll just stand there for 8 seconds, and then they'll shoot at you a little bit more. I love that there's like a bit of personality of these factions. So like the hyenas, because they're like these, you know, street gang, like they're kind of cocky, like, what's up, motherfucker? Like a lot of those guys won't even take cover. They'll just walk out in the open, like holding their machine gun to the side, like, like, what are you going to do? Come at me. And like, so they're really easy to kill because they're not trained combatants. But I started fighting this sort of PMC military corporation.
What, True Sons or something like that?
True Sons or something like that. And they're like laying down, like suppressing fire. They're moving very tactically. At one point I was shocked because I didn't even know this is a thing they could do. But one of them laid on his stomach and took out like a machine gun and was like firing at me and like laying down suppressive fire. I didn't even know you could lay down. I mean, you as the character can't. You can't even crouch. You can go up to objects and like sort of pin up against them to take cover. But like the fact that he was even just laying down and was like, you know, and just opened up his machine gun on me while the other guys were then trying to flank around me while I was pinned down, I was like, oh my God, like they're actually using proper tactics. They had like a completely different sort of personality. They felt far more like disciplined and militarized, whereas like these gang members are like all over the place. They're, you know, so I love that there's that flavor to combat, and it's very punishing. It feels satisfying. I know people knock on the Division for being very bullet spongy. It feels far less in that direction. Most enemies can go down in a couple of shots.
It's all about breaking armor down, which is like very satisfying, and it kind of like nests the bullet sponginess in sort of a real world vibe.
And not every enemy is a bullet sponge. So there's armored enemies now, and you basically just have to focus fire on them, and so it doesn't bother me like it does in the Division 1. In the Division 1, it was so kind of like, oh my God, I'm rolling my eyes because I'm like shooting at a gang member and he's wearing like a nylon Unabomber jacket and has like 27 points of armor, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I could clearly see that you've like duct taped pillowcases to your body, but like in this one, when you're fighting an armored enemy, like they actually look like they're wearing armor. They're sort of a unique enemy that you're taking down. So I'm having a great time with the Division 2.
I'm with you, and we have not I've barely gotten into the numbers game with the gear and loot. Haven't touched I've done like one introductory Dark Zone mission, and there's some big changes to that which sound very inviting to me. There's a multiplayer mode I haven't touched, and a whole bunch more of the map and factions. And endgame shit. There's an 8-player raid coming later this year.
Like it's crazy. There's like the whole settlement system where you can you liberate these human settlements, and then they have these different needs that they want. And I even love like this level of, and it's very light. It's not as big as you'd see in say like Stalker or like sort of those more sandbox shooter games. But like there's this level of sort of systemic, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like simulation. So like these settlements will have humans, and if they need water, they will dispatch like a party to go and get water. And you can follow these NPCs as they go to a water node which is a resource node in the map where you can find water. They'll go and they'll collect it, and then they'll go back to the settlement, and you can just watch them do this. So the world feels very alive in that, like, there's constantly groups of allies that are walking around doing their own things, and whether they're patrolling or getting resources, and then there's enemies who are patrolling. I've like stumbled onto enemies who were, walking around with cases of water, taking it back to wherever they were going. And I'm like, it just creates like this really believable, environment of the, I don't know, people trying to survive in this ruined DC. If you cannot tell, like, I'm very enthusiastic about the Division.
It's great. I will say one thing I want to knock it for, but also praise it for is
knock it.
The Clancyverse is still just dumb as hell, and
it's so bad.
The dry militaristic, like, hints of like nationalist tones. It's like, there's a mission where you go save I killed like 40 men to get the Declaration of Independence back because it's a symbol. It's like a symbol of hope.
Bad.
And it's like, it's a piece of paper. Yeah. You can get it. I mean, like, there's gift shops all over DC. So there's like that shit, but it never really, like, you can ignore that shit so easily in this game.
Yeah,
I feel like it's
it doesn't force you, like, you can skip through cutscenes. The cutscenes are fine, like, they're very short, thank God. So like, you're not really stuck, but like, it's still kind of, it has the one thing that I'm always like, what is going on, is like when you first arrive at the White House, which is like your base of operations, you're literally operating out of the White House. I show up and one of the characters is like, oh, you should go, talk to the locals. They'll be happy to know that there's a new sheriff in town. And I'm like, who the fuck am I that I'm now just like the sheriff here to like ding out justice? And I'm like, I literally shot 4 dogs on the way over here. And,
you monster.
And as soon as I get into the dark zone, the first thing I'm doing is going rogue and killing everyone I can find. Like, I am not an arbiter of justice. Like, it still is tone deaf in sort of this element of like, power and government and who it's very naive in a sense, where it's sort of like, if the world goes to shit, you're the person that's standing for order, and it's like, oh man, I just don't see this ever happening.
No, it's super dumb, but fun.
But it's easy to ignore. Yeah, it's easy to ignore. It is like, compared to the Anthem, I'm just going to shit on the Anthem right now. Like, the fact that Anthem, every time you're done a mission, you go back to this awful place called Fort Tarsus, where 17 characters want to talk to you for like 40 minutes, it feels like sometimes. There's just exposition dumps. To play the Division, where I play for an hour or 2 hours without having any cutscenes, unless... And the ones that I do encounter, a few like maybe 30 seconds to a minute long tops, is really nice. And like the way that the world is so seamless, like there's one load screen to get into the world, and then you'll have a load screen if you're fast traveling. But then other than that, you have this entire massive open world. If you join other players, they just seamlessly enter your game. And then if you're in different locations, you just have to meet up. Or if you leave their game, you have a split-second load screen, and then it just puts you at sort of a nearby landmark. So at most, maybe you're moved like 50 meters from your original location when you do leave a party. Like, it just feels very drop in, drop out, very seamless. Once you've loaded into the game, you're just there. And like, that is such a fucking relief over Anthem, where it's like, literally, if you play an hour of Anthem, 10 minutes of that are load screens. Another 10 minutes of that are just garbage ass NPC dialogue sequences that make me want to die. Like, it's this game is going to eat Anthem's lunch.
All right. We'll have complete thoughts as soon as we can. I know Sam is like marathoning this game to get through the bulk of it and get a review up on the site, but he's liking it too. You can see our review in progress at pcgamer.com. Let's just like sprint through 1 or 2 questions. Some good combos today, so we got to cut the Q&A short, but let's just get through listener Q&A. We do take questions from the PC Gamer Club first and foremost. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to club.pcgamer.com. For more information, it's just a small subscription service that supports us directly, ad-free experience on the site, free game each month, digital sub to the mag, and some other cool benefits. Again, that's club.pcgamer.com. Nick Manley asks, how do you rate the seasonal and annual paid content drop in Destiny 2 that just hit? I've been playing this a little bit. It's Season of the Drifter. It's all about Gambit. Gambit Prime is a new one-round Gambit mode with some, I guess, with a focus on coordinated team play. So, and there's the Reckoning, which is a Jesus Christ, it's a what do you call them? A horde mode of sorts. that ties directly back into Gambit. And it's all about Gambit right now. There's some cool stuff going on in the lore. If you're a hardcore lore fiend for Destiny 2.
You know how I feel about lore.
I do.
I'm just kidding.
But they're doing something cool. In this drop, they are leading up to what is hopefully like a drastic systemic change for Destiny in whatever fall expansion comes out if they have one. And you get to choose a side. There's a rift growing. And so you can choose to side with the Drifter, this mysterious like rogue guy who's running basically human experiments and letting Guardians die, or the Order, which is kind of this mysterious entity that is siding with the Vanguard. So you can choose to like sort of leave your friends behind or go with this new rogue force who might be onto something big. It's really cool.
It's cool. The Destiny subreddit has actually fully embraced it. So right now the Destiny subreddit is at a civil war, and you basically declare your allegiance for one side or the other in the subreddit, and then they're doing like a grand tally, and they're turning it into like a fun little meta community event, which I think is really cool. So if you're a Destiny fan, go check out the Destiny subreddit. You can go.
It's fun right now.
Declare your allegiance.
It's in a good spot. I don't think this is going to be like the thing that brings people back, but it is like another notch in Bungie's belt in creating like a very good end game for Destiny 2. I would just wait till it's all kind of out if you're sitting on Destiny or not sure if you should go back. Just wait a little longer and then take it all at once. Truzen, do you think that Anthem has hit a point of no return, especially in light of Destiny 2's resurgent and Division 2's release? Or do you think they'll pull something off like No Man's Sky or Division 1.8? Steven?
Man, like, of course I want to be optimistic, and I want to say, like, who doesn't want games to be good, right? Like, you have to be a real awful person to be like, I want Anthem to fail. Even if you're frustrated or even angry at it, which I certainly am right now. But, like, honestly, I am very concerned that BioWare will be able to do anything with this. I think that Anthem's, as we're seeing day after day with these new bugs that are coming out and players, doing the math on how sort of the RPG elements of it work and how the gear system works and how the entire end game is structured. And then on top of that, the fact that the campaign is just so bad and so disjointed, and the way that game is just built from the ground up is so disjointed and sort of broken in fundamental ways. I'm like, wow, this isn't like a Destiny or even like a Division 1.8 or whatever, where it's like, oh, we just have to make some changes and then finally it's going to be good. This is like a fundamental, like they're going to have to do some fundamental restructuring to the core of this game to turn it around. And I just don't know if it's going to be able to do that. I don't know if it'll have the luxury to do that, because I think that there's so many fundamental problems. I'm worried that no one's even going to stick around. Like, there's not going to be that core sort of Division or Destiny fan base that's like, we love this game so much, like we're going to stick it through thick and thin, even though there's parts that are really aggravatingly awful about it. Like, I think that Anthem is in a really bad, dire state. BioWare has not spoken to the community in a couple of days now, which is like there's now this sort of looming silence that's building, which maybe they're just trying to prep some sort of plan. Who knows what's going on, but it's in a really bad state right now. Now that the Division 2 is out, and once people start to see what a loot shooter looks like that's actually really good and fun and competent and finished, I don't know if Division's actually going to be, like we said, we've only played a few hours so far, but it certainly looks that way. Sam certainly seems to feel that way, and he's level 21. So anyway, I don't know. I don't think Anthem is going to be making a comeback. I think Anthem will. Yeah. I'm not hopeful.
We'll see.
Is sad.
We'll see. Fingers crossed. I like that studio and I like the stuff they do.
Yeah.
So
it's such a tragedy.
One more before we go. We'll just answer this one real quick because it's a silly question. Pavanois, I don't know how you say that. Do you think Fortnite will die in a few months? And what game will be at the top of the chart? Fortnite's not going anywhere anytime soon. Fortnite will not die. Fortnite has millions and millions of players right now. I hate the narrative that like because Apex exists, Fortnite is
dead
toast.
Game.
Fortnite.
Could you imagine if games were like people though, where like they could just die unexpectedly?
Just like Fortnite had a heart attack and sorry,
the servers just burped and died and
Fortnite choked on a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
Well, It was a nice run. We'll always remember you fondly. Fortnite's not going away you'll see Fortnite around for years in some form or another. They have enough. Epic has made enough money to support that game.
Oh
yeah, far beyond my lifetime.
And even though we're like, oh, Apex is like really coming up and taking a lot of its audience, or like it's rising through the charts so fast, like Fortnite is on every damn console. It's on phones. Do you know how important Fortnite being on phones is for like vast majority of its audience, who are kids who don't have the parents aren't going to buy them an Xbox or a PC, but they do have a phone that they're going to let them play on. It's massively important. So like, yeah, Fortnite's not going anywhere.
And one more question, Bo, how does your hair look so good all the time?
I don't know. I just do it.
just born with it.
Just do it.
Born with it.
You heard it here first, folks.
Born with it.
You want nice hair? Just do it.
My hair needs a patch, but we'll get there.
I like your hair. Are you ever going to cut it, James?
Eventually. I just like at this point I've forgotten. You know how like. God, we're going over time, but like if you don't go to the doctor for a while, sort of you build up the anxiety of calling the doctor and discovering.
I haven't been to the doctor since I was probably 16.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's just like I don't do the doctor now. I guess I don't do that. So like with haircuts now, I'm like I just don't cut hair anymore. It's just not a problem I have. I don't need it.
No, like I completely agree.
Because
at this point, I don't want to go to the doctor because I'm so worried that I'm going to go and I'm going to find out I have like 8 different types of cancer.
Yeah.
All at once. Like I'm scared to find out what's wrong. So I'd rather just keep going and hoping for the best.
So that answers your question, hopefully.
I don't think you should cut it though. It's marvelous.
Thank you. That's gonna do it for the PC Gamer Show this week. I don't know what's going on next week with the show. It's not going to be live because we will be at Game Developers Conference, but I hope to get either interviews up from the show, or maybe we can sit down and just do a quick talk about things we've seen in person. I hope to get something up, and I'm talking with Wes about what that looks like. So stay tuned to pcgamer.com/tag/podcast to find whatever that is. It won't be on twitch.tv/pcgamer, but we are typically here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time streaming. You can always catch the show after the fact at youtube.com/pcgamer. And gosh, we're all over the place now. We're on Spotify. PC Gamer Show is on Spotify. And you can subscribe on Spotify. I don't know if anyone listens to podcasts on Spotify or not, but that's a thing. We're on anchor.fm. We're on Google Play. Still trying to fix that iTunes feed, which is a nightmare and will continue to haunt me until my final days, I'm fairly sure at this point. But until we meet again, don't forget to, Bo,
eat your Wheaties?
God, game on! Don't forget to game on.
Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine.
Every week. All right, everybody. We'll see you later.
Game on.
Bye-bye.